The clock on his phone read 2:17 in the morning. Nathaniel Parker had no business being awake at this hour, but something had pulled him from sleep. A sound, maybe a cry, maybe nothing at all. But his gut told him to move, and after 47 years on this earth, he had learned to trust that feeling. His bare feet made no sound against the cold marble floors as he walked past the grand staircase, past the library, past the rooms that smelled of old money and polished wood. The east wing of the estate had always been quiet. Too quiet, now that he thought about it. His wife Evelyn had insisted years ago that this section remain private, used only for storage and old furniture nobody wanted anymore. He had never questioned it. Why would he? She handled the household affairs, and he handled the empire. That was their arrangement. That was their marriage. But tonight, something felt wrong. A faint light glowed beneath the door of the old storage room at the end of the hallway. Nathaniel paused, his hand hovering over the brass doorknob. He could hear something now. A voice. His wife's voice. Low, cruel, dripping with something he had never heard from her before. He turned the knob slowly, pushing the door open just enough to see inside. What he witnessed in that moment would haunt him for the rest of his life. His wife Evelyn, still dressed in her silk nightgown, was kneeling on the dusty floor. But she was not praying. She was not searching for something lost. She was hovering over a small figure huddled in a wheelchair, a little boy no older than 8 years old, his dark skin glistening with tears that rolled silently down his cheeks. The child's legs were thin and motionless, and his small hands gripped the armrests of his chair as if holding on for dear life. Evelyn's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. You think you matter? You think anyone cares about you? Look at you. You cannot even walk. You cannot even speak without stuttering. You are nothing but a burden. Do you understand me? A reminder of everything I hate. She grabbed a plate from the floor, scraps of food scattered across it, cold and stale. Eat it. Eat it like the animal you are. The boy whimpered, shaking his head, and Evelyn grabbed his chin, forcing his face toward the plate. I said eat. Nathaniel's chest tightened. His vision blurred. This woman, his wife of 12 years, the woman who hosted charity galas and smiled for magazine covers, was torturing a disabled child in the basement of their home. Who was this boy? Why was he here? How long had this been happening? 1,000 questions crashed through his mind, but before he could speak, before he could even breathe, a hand touched his arm from behind. He spun around, heart pounding. Ruth stood in the shadows, her dark eyes wide with fear and something else. Something that looked like desperate pleading. She was their housekeeper, had been for nearly a decade. Quiet, reliable Ruth, who always seemed to know exactly where everything was and exactly when to disappear. Her grip on his arm was firm but gentle, and she leaned in close, so close he could smell the faint lavender of her soap. Her lips barely moved as she whispered, "Don't talk. Please. Not here. Not now." Nathaniel wanted to shout. He wanted to tear into that room and rip his wife away from that child. But something in Ruth's eyes stopped him. This was not the look of a servant protecting her employer. This was the look of a mother protecting her young. He let her pull him back, let her guide him silently down the hallway and into the darkness of the kitchen. His hands were shaking. His mind was racing. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his life, his marriage, and his home began to crumble like sand through his fingers. Before we go any further, I want to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. I see people watching from all over the world, and I genuinely want to connect with each and every one of you. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. Trust me, what comes next is going to shake you to your core. Now let us continue. To understand how everything fell apart that night, you need to understand how it was built in the first place. Nathaniel Parker was not born wealthy. He grew up in a small town in Georgia, the son of a mechanic and a schoolteacher who worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. He remembered the smell of motor oil on his father's hands and the sound of his mother humming hymns while she grated papers at the kitchen table. They taught him the value of hard work, of integrity, of treating every person with dignity regardless of their station in life. He carried those lessons with him as he clawed his way through college on scholarships and odd jobs, as he built his first tech company in a cramped apartment with nothing but a laptop and a dream, as he sold that company for more money than his parents had ever seen in their lifetimes combined. By the time he was 35, Nathaniel Parker was a billionaire. But money, as he quickly learned, could not buy happiness. It could not fill the empty spaces in his heart or silence the loneliness that crept in late at night. That was when he met Evelyn. She was beautiful, elegant, and seemed to understand the pressures of his world without being consumed by them. She came from old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted, and she moved through high society with a grace that Nathaniel admired. Their courtship was swift, their wedding extravagant, and for the first few years, their marriage seemed perfect. They traveled the world, attended galas, graced magazine covers. Evelyn threw herself into philanthropy, championing causes for underprivileged children and smiling warmly at every camera that captured her face. But perfection, as Nathaniel would eventually learn, is often just a mask. Ruth came into their lives 9 years ago, recommended by a mutual friend who described her as the most reliable and discreet housekeeper anyone could ask for. She arrived at the estate with a small suitcase and a quiet demeanor, speaking only when spoken to and performing her duties with meticulous care. Evelyn seemed satisfied with her immediately, and Nathaniel barely noticed her at all. That was how it was supposed to be, after all. Household staff were meant to be invisible, to anticipate needs without being seen, to solve problems without causing disruptions. Ruth excelled at all of it. But over the years, Nathaniel began to notice things. Small things that should not have mattered but somehow stuck in his mind. Ruth always seemed to linger near the east wing, even though there was nothing there but old storage rooms. She would carry trays of food in that direction, far more food than any cleaning task would require. Sometimes, late at night, he would catch her slipping down that hallway with fresh linens or a small basket of supplies. When he asked Evelyn about it, she dismissed his curiosity with a wave of her hand. "Ruth is thorough," she said. "That is why I keep her." He accepted the explanation because he had no reason not to. He trusted his wife. He believed in their life together. But there were other signs he should have noticed. Evelyn grew tense whenever conversations turned to children, especially disabled children. At charity events, she would donate generously but avoid direct interaction with the young beneficiaries, her smile growing tight and strained whenever a child approached her. Nathaniel attributed it to discomfort, perhaps even grief. They had tried for years to have children of their own, enduring rounds of treatments and procedures that left them both exhausted and heartbroken. When the doctors finally confirmed that Evelyn could not conceive, something in her changed. She became more distant, more controlling, more obsessed with maintaining the appearance of their perfect life. The late-night visits to the East Wing became more frequent around that time. Nathaniel would wake up at odd hours to find her side of the bed empty, and she would return smelling faintly of dust and something else he could not identify. When he asked where she had been, she would smile and say she had trouble sleeping, that she had been reading in the library or walking the gardens. He believed her because he wanted to, because believing her was easier than questioning everything he had built his life upon. The night after he witnessed the horror in that storage room, Nathaniel could not sleep. He lay in bed beside Evelyn, watching her breathe peacefully as if she had not spent the previous night tormenting a child. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to confront her, to demand answers, to tear apart the walls of their carefully constructed life. But Ruth's words echoed in his mind. "Don't talk. Not here. Not now." There was something she needed to tell him, something that required privacy and patience. He waited until Evelyn left for her morning appointments, until the house grew quiet and still, before making his way to the kitchen where Ruth was preparing the day's meals. She looked up when he entered, her hands pausing over a cutting board. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on the wall and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Ruth set down her knife and wiped her hands on her apron, her movements slow and deliberate. "I knew this day would come," she said softly. "I just hoped it would not be like this." Nathaniel pulled a chair from the small table in the corner and sat down heavily, his legs suddenly weak beneath him. "Who is that boy?" he asked. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "And why is he in my house?" Ruth closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, they were glistening with unshed tears. "His name is Marcus," she said. And he is your son. The words hit Nathaniel like a physical blow. He stared at Ruth, searching her face for any sign of deception, any hint that this was some kind of terrible joke. But there was nothing there except raw, naked truth. That is impossible, he whispered. I would know if I had a child. I would have been there. I would have. You did not know because she made sure you would never find out, Ruth interrupted gently. She has controlled everything from the beginning. She found out I was pregnant before I could even process it myself. Nathaniel's mind raced backward through the years, trying to make sense of what she was saying. And then it hit him. 9 years ago. The rough patch. He and Evelyn had been fighting constantly, their marriage straining under the weight of failed fertility treatments and unspoken resentments. She had taken a trip to visit her family in Europe, leaving him alone in the empty mansion for nearly 3 weeks. Ruth had been there, new to the household but already efficient and attentive. One night, after too much whiskey and too much loneliness, he had made a mistake. It happened only once, a moment of weakness that he had regretted immediately and buried so deeply he had almost convinced himself it never occurred. We both knew it should never have happened, Ruth said, reading the realization on his face. And I never intended for anyone to find out. When I realized I was pregnant, I tried to leave. I was going to disappear, raise my child on my own, never speak of it again. But Evelyn found the pregnancy test before I could go. She put everything together immediately. Ruth's voice grew heavier with each word. She gave me a choice. Stay and give birth in secret. Let her take the baby and raise him as a private ward of the household, or leave and face destruction. She threatened to ruin my family, to make sure I never worked again, to take my child and throw me into the streets. I was terrified. I had no money, no resources, no way to fight someone like her. So I stayed. Nathaniel felt sick. You gave up your child to protect him? Ruth shook her head slowly. I never gave him up. I have been with him every single day of his life. I feed him, I bathe him, I hold him when he cries. Evelyn lets me care for him because she has no interest in doing it herself. She only wanted control. She wanted to punish me for what happened between us, and she wanted to punish you without you ever knowing it. The tears finally spilled down Ruth's cheeks. But I could not protect him from everything. When Marcus was 2 years old, he developed a rare neurological condition that affected his ability to walk. The doctors said it was degenerative, that without proper treatment, he would lose more function over time. Evelyn refused to authorize any surgeries or therapies. She said there was no point investing in someone who would never be worth anything anyway. Nathaniel stood up so abruptly that the chair clattered to the floor behind him. His hands were shaking with rage. She has been torturing him, he said. I saw what she did last night. She was forcing him to eat scraps off the floor. She called him a burden. His voice broke. He is my son, my child, and I never even knew he existed. Ruth nodded, wiping her face with trembling hands. She keeps him hidden in that room because she cannot stand the sight of him. He reminds her of everything she cannot have and everything she discovered. But she also cannot let him go because he is her leverage. As long as Marcus exists, she controls me completely. And as long as I stay silent, she controls the narrative of your perfect marriage. Nathaniel paced the kitchen, his mind spinning with rage and grief and the overwhelming weight of 9 stolen years. I need proof, he said finally. I need something concrete before I confront her. Ruth reached into her apron pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. I have been preparing for this moment for years, she said quietly. Last year, I managed to get samples for a DNA test. I had them processed through a private laboratory that Evelyn does not know about. She handed him the paper, and Nathaniel unfolded it with trembling fingers. The results were clear and undeniable. Paternity confirmed. Probability, 99.998%. Marcus David. Father, Nathaniel Parker. He stared at the paper for a long time, reading the words over and over as if they might change. But they did not change. They were real. His son was real. And his wife had been hiding him, abusing him, and using him as a weapon for nearly a decade. What do we do now? Ruth asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel looked up from the paper, his jaw set with determination. Now, he said, we end this. Let me pause here for a moment because I know this is a lot to take in. I want to ask you something honestly. How are you feeling right now? Can you imagine discovering that your entire marriage was built on lies? That someone you trusted completely had been hiding your own child from you and abusing them in secret? Put yourself in Nathaniel's position for just a moment. Think about how that would feel. The betrayal, the rage, the overwhelming grief for all the time lost. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if this story is hitting you hard, make sure you are subscribed because we are about to get into what happens next, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Nathaniel spent the rest of that day in a state of controlled fury. He canceled all his meetings, ignored every phone call, and locked himself in his private study with a bottle of water and a legal pad. He needed to think clearly. He needed to plan carefully. Evelyn was cunning and manipulative, and she had spent years constructing a web of lies so intricate that even he had been completely fooled. If he confronted her without preparation, she would find a way to spin the situation, to gaslight him, to make him doubt what he had seen with his own eyes. He called his personal attorney first, a sharp-minded woman named Victoria Chun who had handled his business affairs for over a decade. He did not give her details, only asked her to have divorce papers ready within 24 hours and to ensure that all financial accounts could be frozen at a moment's notice. She asked no questions, which was one of the reasons he trusted her. Then he contacted a private security firm and arranged for 2 discreet agents to be on standby near the estate. Finally, he reached out to the best pediatric neurological specialist in the country and explained that he had a patient who required immediate evaluation and possible surgical intervention. The doctor agreed to fly in the following day. That night, Nathaniel waited in the hallway outside the storage room. He sat in a chair he had brought from the library, positioned in the shadows where he could see the door without being noticed from inside. Ruth knew his plan and had reluctantly agreed to let him handle the confrontation alone. At midnight, the door to the east wing opened softly, and Evelyn appeared in her nightgown, her footsteps light and practiced. She moved down the hallway without looking around, so confident in her secrecy that she never considered she might be observed. Nathaniel followed at a distance, his heart pounding but his steps silent. He watched from the doorway as she entered the storage room and approached Marcus, who was awake and trembling in his wheelchair. The boy had learned not to cry out, not to beg, not to draw any more attention to himself than necessary. He simply sat there, small and helpless, waiting for whatever cruelty his captor had planned for tonight. Evelyn smiled, and it was the coldest thing Nathaniel had ever seen. "Did you miss me?" she asked sweetly, her voice dripping with mockery. "I brought you a special treat tonight. Leftover bread from the trash. Fitting for garbage like you, don't you think?" Nathaniel stepped into the room. "Enough." The word echoed off the walls like a gunshot. Evelyn spun around, her face cycling through shock, fear, and attempted composure in the span of seconds. "Nathaniel," she said, forcing a laugh. "Darling, what are you doing here? This is not—" "I said enough." He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate and heavy. "I know everything, Evelyn. I know who this boy is. I know what you have been doing to him. And I know exactly how long you have been lying to me." Evelyn's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the ugliness beneath. But she recovered quickly, her voice turning defensive. "Whatever Ruth told you is a lie. She is unstable, Nathaniel. She has been making up stories for years trying to turn you against me. That boy is just my son." Nathaniel held up the DNA test results. "This is my son, Marcus. And you have been hiding him, abusing him, and using him as leverage against the woman I fathered him with. Don't you dare stand there and lie to my face." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked up at Nathaniel with wide, confused eyes, not understanding what was happening but sensing that something had shifted. Evelyn's face went pale, then red, then twisted with something that looked almost like hatred. "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? Here it is. Yes, I knew about your little affair with the help. I found out before Ruth even knew she was pregnant. I watched the whole thing fall into place, and I realized it was the perfect opportunity to finally get something I could control. You gave me nothing, Nathaniel. No children, no real love, nothing but your money and your absence. But that boy," she gestured dismissively at Marcus. "He was mine to do with as I pleased. A reminder of your betrayal, a punishment for Ruth's weakness, and a guarantee that neither of you would ever leave me without my permission. Nathaniel stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. This was not the woman he had married. Or perhaps it was, and he had simply been too blind to see it. You kept a child locked in a storage room for 9 years, he said quietly. You denied him medical care, food, basic human dignity. You tortured him because you were jealous and bitter and incapable of being anything other than cruel. And you did it all while smiling for cameras and pretending to be a philanthropist who cared about children. Evelyn laughed bitterly. Philanthropy is about optics, Nathaniel. It always has been. You of all people should understand that. He shook his head slowly. I am done understanding you. I am done making excuses for you. And I am done being married to you. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text message. Within minutes, Victoria Chun appeared at the estate with divorce papers in hand, accompanied by the private security agents Nathaniel had arranged. Evelyn tried to argue, tried to threaten, tried to bargain. She demanded her share of the assets, insisted that the prenuptial agreement entitled her to millions, threatened to go public with stories that would destroy his reputation. But Nathaniel had already spoken to Victoria about everything. The prenup contained clauses about misconduct and moral turpitude that Evelyn had apparently forgotten. Her years of abuse, documented now through Ruth's testimony and physical evidence from the storage room, constituted clear violations. She was entitled to nothing. The divorce would be swift, decisive, and devastating. When the security agents escorted her from the property, Evelyn turned back one last time and looked at Nathaniel with pure venom in her eyes. You will regret this, she said. You will regret throwing everything away for a crippled child and a maid. Nathaniel did not flinch. The only thing I regret, he said, is every day I wasted believing you were human. The door closed behind her, and she was gone. Nathaniel stood in the silence for a long moment, letting the weight of the past few hours settle around him. Then he walked back to the storage room, where Ruth was kneeling beside Marcus, holding his hand and whispering reassurances. The boy looked up at Nathaniel with something that might have been hope or fear, or simply the desperate wish of a child who had never known kindness from anyone except the woman who had secretly been his mother all along. Nathaniel knelt down so he was at eye level with his son. Hey, Marcus, he said softly. My name is Nathaniel. I am your father, and I am so sorry it took me this long to find you. But I promise you, from this moment forward, I am going to take care of you. I am going to make sure you have everything you need. And I am never, ever going to let anyone hurt you again. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, hesitantly, he reached out and touched Nathaniel's hand. His fingers were small and thin, but his grip was surprisingly strong. And in that grip, Nathaniel felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose, connection, love. He looked at Ruth, who was crying silently, and he took her hand too. I should have known, he said. I should have seen the signs. I should have protected both of you. Ruth shook her head. You did not know because she made sure you would not. And you are here now. That is what matters. Nathaniel nodded slowly. I want to do this right. All of it. I want Marcus to have the surgery he needs, the therapy, whatever it takes to give him the best life possible. And I want you to be part of that, Ruth. Not as a housekeeper, as his mother, as his family, as, he paused, searching for the right words, as someone who matters to me, someone I should have treated better from the beginning. Ruth looked at him with a mixture of surprise and cautious hope. What are you saying? Nathaniel squeezed her hand gently. I am saying that I made a lot of mistakes, but I want to make things right. For Marcus, for you, for all of us. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Nathaniel brought in the best doctors money could buy, specialists who examined Marcus and developed a comprehensive treatment plan that included surgery, physical therapy, and ongoing care. The surgery was risky but successful, repairing some of the neurological damage that had been allowed to progress for far too long. For the first time in his young life, Marcus began to regain sensation and movement in his legs. The day Marcus took his first steps was one Nathaniel would remember for the rest of his life. They were in the rehabilitation center, surrounded by therapists and nurses who had been working with the boy for weeks. Ruth stood on one side, Nathaniel on the other, and Marcus was positioned between them, gripping parallel bars with fierce determination. His face was scrunched with concentration, and beads of sweat dotted his forehead. He had been working toward this moment for so long, pushing through pain and frustration and the overwhelming fear that his body would never cooperate. "You can do it, baby," Ruth said softly. "I know you can." Nathaniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "We are right here, son. We are not going anywhere." Marcus took a deep breath. Then, slowly, carefully, he lifted his right foot and moved it forward. Then his left. Then his right again. 1 step. 2 steps. 3. The therapists cheered. Ruth burst into tears. And Nathaniel, who had built an empire and faced down boardrooms full of ruthless competitors, found himself crying openly as his son walked toward him with arms outstretched. He caught Marcus in a tight embrace, feeling the small body trembling with exhaustion and triumph. "I did it, Dad," Marcus whispered. "I really did it." Nathaniel held him close, his heart so full it ached. "Yes, you did, and I am so proud of you." In the months that followed, Nathaniel made good on every promise he had made. He set up a trust fund for Marcus that would ensure his care and education for the rest of his life. He established a legal guardianship arrangement that gave Ruth full parental rights, and he began the process of formally acknowledging Marcus as his son. The estate was renovated, with the old storage room converted into a bright, accessible bedroom filled with books and toys and everything a child could want. Marcus slowly came out of his shell, revealing a sharp wit and a gentle spirit that had survived years of abuse and neglect. He started attending school, making friends, learning to trust that the world was not entirely cruel. Ruth found her own transformation as well. She moved out of the servants' quarters and into the main house, taking her place as a full member of the family rather than an invisible caretaker. She enrolled in nursing courses, wanting to help other children like Marcus, and Nathaniel encouraged her every step of the way. Their relationship evolved slowly, built on a foundation of shared purpose and mutual respect rather than the fleeting passion that had brought them together 9 years earlier. Whether it would ever become something more romantic remained to be seen, but for now, they were partners in the truest sense of the word. Parents to a remarkable boy, survivors of a storm they had weathered together. Evelyn, meanwhile, disappeared from public life almost entirely. Without access to Nathaniel's wealth or influence, she found herself unwelcome in the social circles she had once dominated. The rumors spread quickly, as rumors always do, and soon everyone knew some version of what she had done. Former friends stopped returning her calls. Charitable organizations quietly removed her name from their boards. The lifestyle she had taken for granted crumbled around her, leaving her alone and irrelevant in a way she had never imagined possible. Nathaniel did not follow her fate with any particular interest. She had made her choices, and she would live with the consequences. His focus was on the future, not the past. One evening, about a year after everything had changed, Nathaniel sat on the back patio of the estate watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus was in the garden below, practicing walking with his new leg braces while Ruth spotted him carefully. The boy was laughing at something, his voice carrying on the warm breeze, and the sound of it filled Nathaniel with a peace he had not known was possible. He thought about all the years he had spent chasing success, building his empire, accumulating wealth and status, and all the trappings of achievement. He had believed those things would make him happy, that they were the measure of a life well lived. But sitting here now, watching his son take unsteady steps through the grass while his mother cheered him on, he realized how wrong he had been. The empire was still there, of course. The money, the companies, the influence. None of that had disappeared, but it no longer defined him. It was a tool, not a purpose. A means to an end, not the end itself. What mattered was this moment. This family. This second chance he had almost missed entirely. Marcus spotted him on the patio and waved enthusiastically. "Dad, watch me. I can walk all the way to the fountain now." Nathaniel smiled and rose from his chair. "Show me what you got, champ." He made his way down to the garden and joined Ruth, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. She looked up at him and smiled, a real smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "He is getting stronger every day," she said. "The doctors say if he keeps progressing like this, he might not even need the braces by next year." Nathaniel nodded, his chest tight with gratitude. "He is a fighter. He gets that from his mother." Ruth shook her head. "He gets it from both of us." We all learn to fight in our own way. They watched as Marcus made his way across the lawn, each step steadier than the last. When he reached the fountain, he turned around with a triumphant grin and threw his arms up in victory. Nathaniel applauded loudly, whistling and cheering until Marcus's face lit up with pure joy. In that moment, looking at his son smile and feeling Ruth's presence beside him, Nathaniel understood something profound. The truth had not destroyed them. It had not torn apart the foundations of his life or left him with nothing but rubble and regret. Instead, it had set them free. Free from secrets, from lies, from the prison of a perfect image that had never been real. Free to build something genuine, something messy and complicated and beautifully, achingly human. The story you just heard is not about a billionaire or a maid or even a secret child hidden in a storage room. It is about the lies we tell ourselves and the truths we are afraid to face. It is about the damage we do when we prioritize appearances over authenticity, control over compassion. And it is about the redemption that becomes possible when we finally find the courage to look at ourselves honestly and choose to do better. I want to leave you with a question. Is there something in your own life that you have been avoiding? Some truth you have been too afraid to confront? Maybe it is not as dramatic as what happened to Nathaniel and Ruth and Marcus. But maybe, in its own way, it is just as important. Sometimes the hardest prisons to escape are the ones we build ourselves, brick by brick, lie by lie, until we forget there was ever a world outside the walls. If this story touched you in some way, I want to hear about it. Drop one word in the comments below that describes how you are feeling right now. Is it justice, for the way Evelyn finally faced consequences for her cruelty? Is it tears, for the years that Marcus lost and the love he finally found? Is it hope, for the possibility of redemption even after terrible mistakes? Whatever you are feeling, share it. Let me know this story mattered to you the way it mattered to me when I first encountered it. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss another story like this one. We share incredible true stories every week. Stories about resilience and betrayal and transformation. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Speaking of what is coming next, let me leave you with this teaser. Imagine a billionaire who believes his son died at birth, only to discover 20 years later that the boy is alive and someone in his own household knew the truth the entire time. Who was hiding this secret? Why did they keep it for so long? And what happens when the truth finally comes out? That story is coming soon, and trust me, it will leave you speechless. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, no matter how dark things might seem, there is always a path toward light. You just have to be brave enough to take the first step. I will see you in the next one.